And a limited vision is always going to create limited results. And most people are afraid to speak out of vision because maybe naysayers go, well, how are you going to achieve that? Or that doesn't make sense. And I think we all have this sole purpose within us, right? It's our,
Absolutely.
It's like who we are when we're at our best. It's our values and our abilities and our passions. And when we combine that for the highest context of living, that's when we're living our vision, when it's a cause worthy of our life, when it's something that is not just about us, but it compels us to support and impact others in this world. That's when it comes to vision. Money can be complicated. Let a nerd help you. We're here to demystify the complex nature of money by getting you answers from financial nerds and whiz kids. Welcome to Ask the Money Nerds, a weekly segment of the Wealth Labs podcast where we answer your most pressing money questions. Garrett Gunderson asks the Money Nerds, and do you have people in your life that don't support what you're trying to do financially, that think you're crazy, that don't understand why you would do it this way? Maybe you're starting a business. Maybe you're looking to invest for cash flow. Maybe they've just thought you need to invest early, often, and always, and you just got to put it in the market and let it ride for the long haul. And maybe you're on this YouTube channel and you're going, oh, wait. Is that really what I'm supposed to do? Because that seems like it's not working for 95% of the population. Well, today on Ask the Money Nerds, we've got questions from people that are starting out, they're not sure what to do, and they want to do things right. So whether you're changing and switching gears right now, and you're looking to do something better, or you're just starting out and you want to do it the right way from the beginning, I think this is the show for you. I've got my Chief of Staff, Stolba, here. What's up?
Good to be back.
Good.
I love today's question, particularly because it's centered around the expansion of the mind and the creation of a vision and how this influences our relationship to money. So the question comes in from Alex7555. He asked us a question in response to your Broken Struggling video on YouTube. And he says, I'm an 18-year-old with a vision to be financially free, but others around me don't have the same vision or purposefully neglect it. What financial material do you recommend I study to become more financially free at an early age like mine? So as I'm thinking through Alex's question, there are a couple of parts to this. So the first is, what is vision? And what does it have to do with money?
I think there's a few pieces that we got to talk about. First is wealth architecture. So wealth architecture is like building out your plan, right? And I think there's 5 P's to build your wealth architecture. The first is perspective. So a lot of times if you have an abundant perspective and everyone around you is seeing the world from scarcity, right? That it's a finite pie, that it's a zero-sum game and there's winners and losers and you got to take the most that you can. They're not going to understand a more abundant thinker that's looking for a bigger picture, that might have bigger or more audacious goals. So we begin with perspective. Where do you have scarcity? Scarcity is those limiting factors where you think something's not possible, that you can't have it all, that it can't work, that it's impossible, and then all of a sudden you start to limit your actions. Then we move to purpose. And when you engage in purpose and say, what is it that I could do to be a better investor that's aligned with who I am? That's investor DNA. That's what I call it, right? That's your core values. It's your core competencies. It's the things that drive you. When you start to look and say, what can I become excellent at? And you focus instead of diversify, that's going to help propel you forward because you're going to invest in what you know. So you've got to build the perspective first, then build purpose to narrow it down to what you're going to focus on. Now you build out your plan. Is that plan economic independence, to have enough recurring revenue coming in to cover your basic expenses? Well, if that's the plan, you might not want to fund a 401k right now because that's usually waiting for 30 years or longer until 59 and a half, and it might take a long time before that kicks off cash flow. Then it's about building the right financial team, the right professionals to help you execute that plan. And then finally, the products. Most people jump to a product, a professional sells them, and they go, okay, now I've got a plan. A product and a plan are 2 very different things.
That's a good differentiator.
Right. So we got perspective, purpose, plan, and then the last piece is the professionals and the products. That's what it takes to have wealth architecture or a financial plan. Now, vision is really what that big part of purpose is. It determines the direction in which we go. And a lot of people are limited in their vision based upon their current financial circumstance. What do they have? What do they think is possible? What are their abilities? And when they get into a selfish state, only thinking of themselves, they miss the point of collaboration or creation or even delegation. And so they get limited based upon that. So vision to me is something beyond our reach, something we don't yet know how to achieve, yet it's compelling, it's exciting. It's not just about us.
Scare you a little bit, right?
Possibly scary, right? Saying 1 million people becoming economically independent, being the #1 financial channel on YouTube. These were all visions that we're saying we didn't know how to achieve at the moment we spoke it. But by being willing to speak it and being bold enough about it, you start to gather resources. You start to become more resourceful. You build a bigger plan that allows other people to support you. You don't have to do it alone. So yeah, vision is kind of the container of what we're operating in. It determines our actions. It determines what we're up to. And a limited vision is always going to create limited results. And most people are afraid to speak out of vision because maybe naysayers go, well, how are you going to achieve that? Or that doesn't make sense. And I think we all have this sole purpose within us, right? It's our,
Absolutely.
It's like who we are when we're at our best. It's our values and our abilities and our passions. And when we combine that for the highest context of living, that's when we're living our vision, when it's a cause worthy of our life, when it's something that is not just about us, but it compels us to support and impact others in this world. That's when it comes to vision. A goal or an objective is just when we're doing something we think we know how to achieve.
Yeah.
They're usually not too scary.
We can see the road. We can figure out how to get there.
Right. It's like, okay, so vision's a little bit beyond that. And yeah, you're going to have people that when you speak in a vision that might be, preachers, teachers, family, friends that are well-intentioned, that just goes like, oh, you might be setting yourself up for disappointment, or that sounds crazy, or they're holding me to a higher standard if I start to accomplish that. And then you're that person that's going, I don't know about that, right? Because you're like, well, if you succeed, then what does that say about me if I'm playing small? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of kind of baggage that comes along with that. And so as he's speaking something that's different, that can feel scary. And that might also mean to those well-intentioned family and friends, like, well, where does that leave us? Mm-hmm. Are we still going to be like, and so I like to communicate like, hey, you're important to me. I love you. And I'm doing this. And then I would also say, be careful who you share some of these things with. Some people just don't get it. Some people, it's like, that's foreign to them. It's not what the conversation's going to be. So find those people that are weird like you, that are crazy enough to be like, that sounds awesome, and that they want to support you and they want to cheer you on and they want to be part of that process, and be selective with your conversations. Yeah. So I don't bring the naysayers in and go, hey, I want to do this, and like they don't like me, and then let them crap all over the idea. That doesn't make sense. I bring it to people that go, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And, I think to touch back on what you're saying about perspective, I know in my own life, as I've expanded my own vision and what I want for myself, people have fallen off. Some of them have fallen off naturally. Some of them I've had to have difficult conversations with and say, this is where I'm going. And it's a difficult thing to do, is to say, the relationship is not working anymore and we're not helping each other get to where we want to be. But I think just for Alex and anybody else that's looking at building an audacious vision, just be forewarned, there may be some relationships that are in your life today that won't be in your life in the future.
Right. And, or they at least change the dynamic of that relationship.
Yes.
There's some people that I still see every now and again. We don't talk about my vision. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about what I'm up to. We just talk about, hey, what's going on and how are you doing? And we keep it pretty light, which I don't get too intrigued by that. So I'm not spending a huge amount of time, but I don't want to fight or get into the drama or make them wrong. They get to live their life the way they choose. I'll live the life I choose. And every now and then they're like, well, you've changed. I'm like, well, thank you.
Yes, that's a compliment, actually.
It doesn't have to be a negative thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that as a compliment and not a negative thing. Like, you've changed. Great. I always want to be a person that is growing and changing and evolving. And if I'm the same person that I was 2 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, then there's probably an issue, you know?
So yeah, we have the core of who we are, and then we have the expansion and extension of what we can do. Mm-hmm. And as we learn, and I feel like certain things that challenge us are exciting. Like, I've gotten great euphoria from doing stand-up comedy that no amount of drunken binge I've ever had in college could compete with, and so
that's impressive.
It was a natural drug, so to speak, by doing that.
Yeah.
All right. What was the other part of the question?
So, what does vision have to do with money? But I guess before we go to there, I want to know your thoughts on how do you go about creating an audacious vision? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, there's some cool resources out there. My friend Cameron Harold has a couple books, Vivid Vision, Double Double, that talk about it. I think that's great. I think that even getting together with people, like we have our monthly vision meeting, mm-hmm. and a lot of that is I just like to sit and tell you the crazy things that I'm thinking about.
And in those conversations, I think it's important to note that everything is on the table. It's a brainstorm. Right. It's not, this is practical, I think we can do this. You get to say whatever you want to say.
Right. Yeah. And like some of my vision comes from actual dreams I have at night. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sleeping, have some dream, and I wake up, I'm like, that's interesting. That's super compelling. Mm-hmm. And so when I had this vision for a one-man show, well, I called Bo Eason, who had a one-man show. I called Michael Port, who could be a director and is an actor, and found who said, let's roll. And then I told Barry Katz about it, and, he's managed a lot of people. So it's like the conversations change. And so for me, whether it's sitting down and writing it out, I capture my vision in the tool called OmniFocus, where I'm writing those things down.
Evernote is also good.
Yeah. And, Evernote, just because, I use that for other things as well. And then I just have regular conversations with my wife, and then I just use Word documents, and I'll just start typing out Word documents, and I'll write it in an outline. Win Then Play playbook that I just created has a whole thing called Visionary About Vision that asks the questions to pull out vision for people, and then gives them certain frameworks to distinguish the vision from the objective from the task, so that it starts to give them some like granular ways to start working towards that, but doesn't limit it based upon what's currently in existence. So who is it that you spend time with that when you talk to them, you get inspired, things expand? What can you do to have those types of experiences? For me, long drives with my wife can bring that out, where I'm talking about vision. The call I had this morning with Steve from 2MM, that's my social media firm, and what we're talking about with a weekly show expands the vision. And I just like to think of things that are currently out of my reach, that engage new levels of ability beyond where I'm currently at. And then I'm constantly looking to converge the things that I'm most interested in, from money to comedy to, video to writing. And so your conversations, if they can move more towards the excitement of the vision more frequently, instead of only the execution or only the minutia or the details, I think it really comes down to scheduling that specific time and creating a habit to have that in your life, so that it doesn't get crowded out by the busyness of the world.
Yeah, definitely. In your example about listening to your dreams, I think an important part of vision, at least as it's developed in my own life, is paying attention to what I'm thinking about, how I'm spending my time, like letting my life speak and guide me in that direction. And that sounds probably airy-fairy a little bit, but pay attention to the things that make your heart beat faster. When you're in conversation, you want to engage with a lot of passion. So listening to those details that we often overlook just by being really busy in life, I think those little nuances will kind of guide you in the path of knowing what your vision is, and then you can create and expand it from there.
And let the world conspire for you instead of against you. Meaning, if you're willing to speak it into existence, it's crazy how things start to unfold. Yeah. It's like this universal conspiracy theory where the universe starts like shuffling things and bring it your way. And maybe part of it's because you're paying attention. Maybe part of it's because you're changing the conversation, and our conversations are going to really open up those possibilities. And if you aren't having those conversations, you might have met someone that would have been extraordinary for you, but there was never any engagement because it never got exciting. So vision is the rarest commodity. It's the thing that most people don't take the time to create, because it's either not clear, because it's either too selfish. Like if you think retirement's a vision, that's a limited goal that's only about you and maybe a spouse. If we're talking about money goals, those are goals. Those are not vision. Like, vision has to do with engaging who you are at the highest level with a cause that's worthy of your life that impacts other people.
Yeah. No
JFK saying, "Let's land a man on the moon and return him safely home in the decade." That's a vision, right? Being the world's best space program, that's rhetoric. That's like, it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we're going to do this amount of revenue. That's a goal. That's not really vision. Vision should have a level of excitement and enticement, a little bit of inspiration with maybe a little bit of fear that you mentioned before. And I feel like it takes time. It's a muscle that you build. I had what I thought was a vision back in the day, and I realized, well, it seemed like a vision because I just didn't know how to accomplish it. Then I accomplished it. I'm like, oh, I aimed kind of low. I think the best example is when I raised my hand in front of a room of 85 people and said, I'm going to take my book to New York Times. I'm going to get that to the New York Times bestselling status. And by speaking it in the room, which I was scared about saying because I didn't know how to do it, it was a self-published Killing Sacred Cows book back in 2006 or 7. And someone came up and they said, are you serious about that? And I go, yeah. He goes, I'm going to find someone that can help you. And this guy went out and found someone and connected us. Yeah. That became a book promoter and a literary agent, and kind of brought that about. And I remember going home and telling my wife, I'm going to make Killing Sacred Cows a New York Times bestseller. I don't even know if we had an ISBN number at the time. I don't know if any book I sold could possibly even count towards it. She's like, well, of course you are. Like, in her mind, that was a goal. But I didn't know, how does the list work? How do you get your book in bookstore? I didn't know any of those answers, right? but it changed the conversation, speaking it and declaring it to other people. And for me, I develop vision in those conversations a lot of times, because sometimes just in my head, it's different than when I collaborate, or someone says, what do you mean by that? Or how are you going to do that? Or what would be the coolest way of having that happen? So who are those critical relationships that you can count on to expand that vision, to share that vision, to support that vision, to move everything forward?
And that brings up a good point too. Like, what you thought was a vision was really a goal or an objective. And so it's a good reminder, as you begin formulating what your vision is, you'll go through different iterations. So whatever you're putting out there that will stretch you today, right? I think as long as you're moving forward and building momentum, you're in a good place. You might not have the biggest vision right now, but as long as you're continuing to propel yourself forward, you're making steps towards living a larger life and elevating yourself.
And don't get trapped in the notion of, I'll be happy when. Like, you've
yeah.
already won if the vision's exciting. Like the one-man show filling Madison Square Garden, getting on Broadway, like just the creation of it's been fun.
Yep.
Just the practice of it, just the learning how to build these personas and, you know, read. Like, I was working on it for about an hour this morning, just on my own right here where we're recording, and I was having fun doing it. Like, it was like, you know, it gave me engagement, and it gave me a degree of happiness that if that morning would have been watching TV, I wouldn't have had. You know, I'd have felt like bored or, you know, unhappy. So it's like, I've already won just by having that vision.
Yeah, it changes your energy and how you show up in the world.
Right.
I think we could talk about vision for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Alex's question. So how does vision impact, you know, our money, our relationship with money?
Well, dollars follow value, and vision is one of the greatest things that catalyzes value creation. Because if it's a vision that helps others because we're serving them or we're solving problems in some way, then vision is a bigger container for money to come into. If it's just, you know, like when I was in college, I was at an inbound call center to earn some extra bucks, and we'd go on Saturdays and Sundays and take these calls. And I remember turning to my buddy Anthony, I'm like, you know, if we worked 16 hours a day, this still would never provide much of a life.
Right.
It's like, yeah. It's like, no matter how much more time we spend, no matter how much harder we work, there's not much scale, there's not much leverage. It's just, we're performing a service that really at this point, computers, I'm sure, are doing all that work at this point. You know, you need human beings. So it's not really about harder work. The hardest work is coming up with the vision. Then the work gets actually easier. But a lot of people, you know, are scared to have that vision. They don't know how to accomplish. What will other people think? What will they say? So if we get a vision that's so engaging and compelling, then we have a bigger opportunity to make an impact. The bigger the impact we make, the more money we can make, right? Unless we're trying to be a nonprofit or only help out people who don't write checks, you know? So I feel like vision absolutely opens that up because it expands our reach, or it more deeply impacts the people that we do reach, and therefore more money can come in.
So the last question here that we want to answer, once money starts coming in, I think it's important to have some level of financial literacy. Like, what do I do with the money? So the last part to the question for today is, how does one go about developing their financial literacy? You know, an 18-year-old asking this question, I commend this person. I think that's pretty impressive. Yeah. So what are just a couple of things that we can toss out that people can start with?
I started to increase my financial literacy at 15. I got a checking account. My mom helped me balance my checkbook. I met with a woman, Patty Rigby, who worked in my mom's office and did accounting. And she taught me basics about income statements and balance sheets. And I had started a little car detailing business that I started creating income statements and balance sheets for. And then, you know, and so all of a sudden I'm learning about real life and real world examples of how this happens. And then I started to read books. My initial books weren't as helpful. Millionaire Next Door, which was leading me into being a miser and completely miserable. Then on to Rich Dad Poor Dad, which had me think about creating cash flow from assets and started to open up my mind. And then I started to, you know, just study finance in general, licensing programs and reading everything I could. And what I found is there's a lot of limiting information out there that was all about cutting back, scrimping, budgeting, what we could do to eliminate, putting money in mutual funds. So, you know, as self-serving as it is, I would think that Killing Sacred Cows is a great book when you're looking at how to avoid the mistakes, mishaps, and myths that hold people back and have more permission to succeed. 5 Day Weekend is a great book if we're looking at how can you make more money? How can you keep more money? And then how can you earn more money on your money? It's a really nice framework for that, so that you build an automated infrastructure to become economically independent. What would the Rockefellers do is a great book at understanding, like, where could you start saving money right now in the simplest format, in even the smallest amounts that are safe and protected, that can help you kind of create sustainable wealth. And then Budgeting Sucks is really about, hey, what is a more comprehensive wealth architecture and how do you implement that? So to me, we're putting out the full library. We're making sure, because I don't like most of the advice that's out there. A lot of the advice is either for the uber affluent and ultra wealthy. That's actually some pretty good advice, but doesn't quite trickle down. Yeah. Right? Then there's other advice that's all about kind of poverty mindset and very much in scarcity. That's all about what you eliminate, what you cut back, and has almost nothing to do with production. So, I would just go through the route of, we've got this YouTube channel, we've got a lot of books that we put out there, and a lot of great resources that people can download. Yeah,
and I would even encourage people to find just a couple of relationships of people that are moving in the same direction. Go to the young professional meetup groups in your town. Find an entrepreneurial community where you can just go in and sit and listen to people who have the same philosophy and mindset of where you want to be. So I think there's just so much power in the people that we surround ourselves with, and that's a way that we can build our financial literacy, is by being a part of conversations.
And when you're young, you have a huge advantage. When you're 18, so many people will meet with you that wouldn't meet with you if you're 28 or 38, because they want to pay it forward, because they, like, you were impressed to see an 18-year-old looking to do something. Yeah. So I leveraged that when I was 18 to 22. I was able to meet with people that normally wouldn't have probably given me the time of day. Everything from working out with this guy, Steve Harrop, that managed $5 billion in municipal bond funds before he became a professor, to sitting down and having a frozen yogurt with him and asking him questions, to him eventually even starting to work with me when I got in the financial business. So it was, as a client. So it's like just use that. Don't use them, give them value, find out and let them know that you're going to pay it forward. And I think that there's a real opportunity to get connected directly.
Yeah. Seek to add value, not just extract information. Right. So I think that's one thing that you can put out there, like you were saying, the universe kind of conspiring to make our dreams a reality. Just ask. I think the biggest thing, sometimes we get caught up in, if I ask and what if someone tells me no? Just ask and take that no as data and information on how to pivot and move forward, but not as a rejection. So just, put your request out there and see who will meet you. And you never know what you're going to learn. Nerds. Yep. Ask us.
Yeah. All right. So we've went through vision, wealth architecture. We've gone through, basics for financial literacy. So go out there, askthemoneynerds.com, ask your questions. We'll give you some answers. And for those that are going, oh, Garrett just promoted his books, well, I'll just give them to you for free. Wealthfactory.com/megakit, MEGAKIT, wealthfactory.com/megakit, cash flow guides, and 2 books, What Would the Rockefellers Do and Killing Sacred Cows. You can download them on me. They're for you. Take care.